Hello everyone, welcome back to our discussion on population genetics and evolution. And now we are going to discuss about the Hardy Weinberg equilibrium. So Hardy Weinberg equilibrium, also referred to as a Hardy Weinberg principle, describe a population that is not evolving. So this particular concept of Hardy Weinberg equilibrium is a theoretical concept, and it defines a population which does not evolve. No evolutionary process is acting on that particular population, and hence this population is entirely an imaginary population which does not exist in nature. This is completely in imaginary set of population where we are assigning some certain principles or certain equations onto this particular this is a particular conceptual population where some equations etc can be applied or can be derived out of this particular population, or that this particular population is the one which is following certain equations or certain mathematical equations, and hence the use of such an equilibrium, which is the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, is that this is taken as a standard with which you can compare uh, the population which is existing in nature, which are evolving by different means. So this particular, and it is used to compare the allele frequencies in a given population over a period of time. And this is, as I said, this provides a framework for understanding how population is evolving. So in this particular Hardy-Weinberg population, or when a population is said to follow Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, as we said in the beginning, it is not evolving. And when a population is not evolving, or when no evolutionary forces acts on it, it can be said that the allelic frequency or the gene frequency will remain the same generation after generation, because we said that the one factor that is affecting this uh, change in allelic frequency is the genetic drift, the bottleneck, or the found effect. So that is one part of an evolutionary process. So natural selection, and there are other processes also which causes a change in, or which is the result for change in gene frequencies. So when such forces are not acting in a population, the population's gene as well as the allelic frequency will be remaining a constant generation after generation. It will remain unchanged. So it will be a constant population, generation after generation, because it is not influenced by any external factors. And this allows us to predict the allele frequency in a living population. That's why it is, I said, this is taken as a standard to study the population which now exists which now exists, and how they are evolving, to know how they are evolving, etc. And a population must meet these rules in order to be considered to be in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. The first and foremost thing is that the population should be very, very large. Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium will not be followed in a small population, because, as we said, in a small population, even genetic drift is creating a very higher consequence. As a result, this theoretical or this particular Hardy-Weinberg population should be very, very large. It will be a very large population. The second thing is that random mating might must occur. That means individuals will be mating by chance. There is no selection. That means in a population, in a normal or in an existing or a natural population, usually mating does not occur at random. Mating usually occurs by selection, because in every population you can see that for selecting a mate, if you see different types of animals where you can see this courtship behavior, like dancing behavior, waggle dances. So there are different behavioral pattern exhibited by usually by males to attract the females, and females will be choosing the male which is showing the perfect attributes or perfect behavior. The other males will not getting a chance to mate with the female. So there, in a natural population, there is a selection process. In the selection process for choosing a mate, So such a process must not happen in a population which is at Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So mating should occur at random in the sense that every individual in that population will have an equal chances to mate. That means there is no selection. There is no selection criteria. Likewise, the selection criteria which is prevalent in natural population. So, and that is what is called as random mating. Random mating means every individual in that population is having a chance to mate regardless of any selection pressures. There is no selection pressures in mating, and that particular. The other one, which happens in natural one, is called as non-random mating because selection processes happens. Next is there should not be gene mutation because if mutation happens, there will be change in gene frequencies. So this is a population where gene frequencies are remaining constant. So the one factor that is changing the gene frequency is mutation, because in a population, if a mutant arises and that mutant is going to be a favorable mutation and that is going to be populated in that. As a result, if you see will be a change in the allele frequency. So this Hardy-Weinberg population should not have the mutation, which is the third one. There should not be migration as well as immigration. That means individuals going from from this population to the other population is called as migration, and also there should not be immigration. That means individuals should not come from other population to this population. So this is an isolated population. A Hardy-Weinberg population is an isolated population where there is no mutation, there is no migration and immigration, and there is no genetic drift, because we discussed in the previous session that genetic drift causes change in allelic frequency and that results in evolution. So there should not be a genetic drift, bottleneck or founder effect, and no natural selection process should happen, because when there is selection there will be difference in, because whenever there is a selection procedure happening, that will affect the gene frequency or the allelic frequency, because when a particular individual is selected, whether by nature, whether by mate, whatever it is, the other alleles are not getting a chance to go into the next generation. So whatever be the mate selection as well as natural selection should not happen in this particular population. So when a population is following these six rules, the population should be large, there is random mating, no migration, no immigration, no mutation, no natural selection, and no genetic drift. Such a population is said to be in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. And a population in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium never occurs in nature, because in nature, every population, the six rules will be violated. These six rules are always violated for a population in nature. As a result, no population in nature is following a Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. And a population that is following Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is expected to follow the equations, that is P plus Q is equal to 1 and Q square P square plus 2PQ plus Q square. This binomial, a population which is following Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium will be following this equation, or will be fit to this particular equation, which is the binomial equation. Either P plus Q is equal to 1, or P plus Q the whole square is equal to 1, or P square plus 2PQ plus Q square is equal to 1, where small p is the frequency of the dominant allele and Q is the frequency of the recessive allele. So this P and Q is the allelic frequency, and when you come to P square, if you take it as A, so this is the allelic frequency. So here allelic frequency, as we discussed in gene frequency, allele will, or when you find out the frequency of an allele, you should include the individuals which are both homozygous as well as heterozygous in both this case. When you come to the genotypic frequency, these are the genotypic frequency, where P square is the frequency of the individuals which are dominant, Q square is the frequency of the individuals which are homozygous recessive, and 2PQ is the frequency of the individuals which are heterozygous. P and Q is the allelic frequency, and dominant allele frequency is P, and The recessive allele frequency is Q. So this is what this is the equation that is being followed by a particular population which is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. And coming to the factors that upset Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, gene frequency or allele, everything is the same. That means whatever factors is affecting Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium will naturally affect the allelic frequency or the gene frequency. So the factors that upset Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium are the factors that affect the gene frequency or the allelic frequency. So evolution is not happening in a population if it is in Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, and usually evolution is disrupting Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So now we'll discuss the different factors that are upsetting this Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium, and there are six different factors that are upsetting the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. They are: the first one is a population size. The second one, you can see that it is exactly the opposite of what we discussed in the rules for following Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. The first one being the population size, the second one is non-random mating, the third one is mutation, the fourth one is genetic drift, bottleneck or founder effect, migration and gene flow, the last one is natural selection. So coming to the first one, which is population size. So according to the Hardy-Weinberg law, in a large population, the gene frequency is more or less constant. That we also saw in the discussion of genetic drift. Because when a population is very large, the effect of mutation, the effect of genetic drift, effect of natural selection, etc., will be very, very small or negligible. But natural selection, a larger population remains a constant when mating is at random and there is no mutation and selection. So when these are present in a larger population, it will follow. But whenever there is natural selection in a larger population, and whenever there is a favorable mutation which is coming to existence in a Hardy-Weinberg or in a particular population, it will upset the Hardy-Weinberg law. It appears that my selections are really ineffective in very small and very larger population, and it really affects the population whenever its size is very small. Natural selection is operating in all populations, but the effect genetic drift will operate in both the population, whether the population is large or small. It does not have any difference in that, but the effect will be severe in a smaller population. When genetic drift and natural selection operate, they tend to cooperate. As a result, deleterious genes from small populations are eliminated more rapidly than in a larger population, in which selection alone is effective. So that is the first one regarding the population size. So population size is one of the factors which will upset Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. That means if the population size is very small, which is an opposite of Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. When it is very small, the effect that is with the smaller effect that is happening, or even if in a larger population, if a favorable mutation occurs, etc., that will upset the gene frequency and that will affect the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. Next is non-random mating. So non-random mating will affect Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium or a gene frequency, and this is what we discussed in the other session, or the rules for Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So non-random mating is a type of mating where mating is due to selection, where there are in some cases of many animals where female is a selecting agent. Female is a selecting the most fit male to mate with her and to create their offspring. So in such a case, what happens is that that male or the genes which is present in that particular male moves on to the next generation. There will be many males which are not fit when compared to this particular male. They are losing a chance to produce their young ones. So in such a case, this is also affecting because those less fit individuals are also having an alleles which is included in that population. But when they are missing a chance to reproduce, that particular alleles which might be present only in them, they might get eliminated or they might not get a chance to reproduce and move on to the next generation. And this is how non-random mating is affecting gene frequency or allelic frequency, because there is a selection. Whenever selection happens, the selected individuals, or the genes in the selected individuals is having a chance to be showing up more in that particular population. The other ones are having a very less chance to be present in the population. The same thing with the mutation, the third one, which is mutation. So mutation are the changes that is altering the genetic material. When mutation, or whatever the type of mutation may be, whether chromosomal aberration, point mutation, etc., this forms the raw materials for evolution, and it disturbs the genetic equilibrium and gene frequency. So mutation rate usually in natural population is very, very low, and the continuous occurrence of mutation in a population is called as a mutation process pressure. And if a population is under mutation process, naturally its allelic frequency and gene frequency will change. The next is bottleneck and founder effect, which we discussed in detail in the previous session. So you can include the points here. What is genetic drift, what happens in bottleneck, and what happens in founder effect, and how it is affecting, or how it is causing the change of, or how it is upsetting the gene frequency or allelic frequency. Next is migration and gene flow. So, as we said earlier, migration and gene flow, that is, animals have a tendency to migrate. When they migrate from one population to other, and they breed in the other population, the genes which were not present in that particular population will be invested in that particular population. And if another one moves from this population to another, there will be a flow of genes due to migration, and that will also upset. It is not upsetting, actually, it is changing, or because of the introduction of new alleles, it is changing the gene or the allelic frequency. So there is either there will be addition of new genes into the gene pool, or loss of genes in the gene pool. So depending upon the effect of migration, or if it is emigration, there is loss of gene. If it is migration, there is addition of genes into the gene pool, etc. Coming to the last one, which is natural selection. So, natural selection is the particular selection that is done by nature on the organisms, which are having the favorable, or when a natural calamity, etc., happens, the favorable ones are having a chance to survive. The other ones will not survive. So that is also causing or that is also resulting in a change in allelic or gene frequency, because all the other individuals which were there in the population is losing a chance because they didn't survive. As a result, their alleles are lost, and that losing of the allele because they are not surviving or they are not fit results in change in the gene or the allelic frequency. And this natural selection can be of different types. Either it can be a stabilizing selection or a normalizing selection. A stabilizing or a normalizing selection happens in an environment which is unchanging. So it operates in the population when the environment is constant or normal. There is no environmental hazards or environmental pressure. And in such a condition, if there is a selection or a natural selection, that results in what is called as, or that causes stabilizing selection or normalizing selection. So in such a population, when there is no pressure from the environment or environmental calamities, a mutation is occurring in that particular population, and and this mutation is a deleterious mutation, and natural selection check the accumulation of such mutation and maintains the genetic constants of the population. So such a type of selection where nature is eliminating the mutation and stabilizing the genetic constitution of that particular population, that is called as, so that is also a selection because the mutant one is being eliminated. So that is what is called as stabilizing or normalizing selection, uh, where the mutants are being eliminated. Next is directional selection or progressive selection. So it produces a regular change within the population in one direction with respect to the changes in the environment. So there will be changes in the allelic or gene in this particular directional selection or progressive selection. There is a change in allelic or gene frequency depending on the environment. The example is of the particular moth, which is Biston betullaria. We usually discussed in the example with natural selection, where you have a brown colored moth and a black colored moth. So what happened was that before industrial revolution, the hypermelanistic black one was very less in number because they were taken up by the predator, and their number was very less. But after industrial revolution, when the soot deposited over the barks of the trees, what happened was that the brown color lost its camouflaging effect. The black one survived. As a result, there was a change. Uh, there is a change of this. So there is a change in frequency because most of the 90 percentage of the black ones were eliminated during the before industrial revolution. After that, 90 percentage of the brown ones are getting eliminated. So there is a gradual or a drastic change in allele frequency which is happening in such selections which is under environmental stress. The last one is the disruptive selection or diversifying selection. So this can be taken as an example of an adaptive radiation, which we'll discuss in the coming session. So here, what happens is that whenever a particular species is having, or they are having, when the different microhabits available in the same environment, natural selection may favor two or more phenotypes to diverge. If a particular group of organism they are having very selective microhabitat, for example a special type of food, and if all the individuals in the population is not getting access to that particular food, a few groups with a fewer type of modification, they may start preferring another type of seed or another type of food. Okay, such differences which are happening, and what will happen at the end is that this particular a group which now separated from the previous group and started feeding on another type of seed or another type of food, gradually they will evolve into a new species because they are feeding on another, after many generations they will have a different type of morphology. So we'll discuss this particular disruptive selection in detail. So this is nothing but what is called as an adaptive radiation that is happening in species, or disruptive selection. And disruptive selection can be explained on the basis of what is called as adaptive radiation. So with this, we come to the end of this particular session or this particular topic, which is population genetics and evolution. Thanks for hearing.